All right, Lab 15, the reproductive systems. So, the reproductive systems, if you go to page 153, you'll see under testes, seminiferous tubules, and interstitial cells. You can scratch those out. They are not on our model. Also go down to 4, it's ductus deferens. I will not accept it as deferens. It is ductus deferens. Number 9, bulbourethral glands. You can scratch that out because we cannot see it on our model. And then under penis, prepuce, you can scratch that out. The models we use are circumcised. All right, then for the female reproductive system, I just want to point out that they show you, say for instance, labium majus, labium minus. Those are the singular version. Then labia majora and labia minora are the plural version. You can use either one. I don't care. Then uterus, you should add a number 5 down at the end of uterus. And that'll be perimetrium. So the outermost layer of the uterus is the perimetrium. Then under that is uterine tubes. I will accept uterine tubes. I will not accept fallopian tubes. Do not use fallopian tubes. It is uterine tubes. And then you can scratch out infundibulum. Infundibulum and fimbriae are in basically the same spot, so I find that confusing. So we're just going to do fimbriae. All right, we'll start off with the male reproductive system. Here's our lovely model of the male reproductive system. You can see here the scrotum, the skin sac that holds the testes, the epididymis that lies on the posterior and superior surface of the testes, the spermatic cord carrying blood vessels, nerves, and the ductus deferens to the abdominal wall. The urinary bladder is here. The ductus deferens going past the urinary bladder. Here's the rectum. There's the prostate. Here's the penis, and the head of the penis is known as the glans. All right, so the testes. The testes are ovoid organs, about 4 centimeters long by 2.5 centimeters in diameter. They are filled up with teeny, teeny, tiny coiled tubules. Lots and lots of coiled up tiny tubules. And these tubules are known as the seminiferous tubules. And it is within the walls of the seminiferous tubules that sperm are produced. So immature sperm are made in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. So here is the testes, epididymis. Here is the spermatic cord. There's an opening called the inguinal ring that leads to the inside of through the abdominal wall into the abdominal pelvic cavity. And here is the pubis bone, part of the os coccyx. This is the pubis portion of the os coccyx. So directly above that is where the inguinal ring is. And for some men, sometime in their life, some of the small intestine may squish out the inguinal ring, leading to an inguinal hernia. And if you ever notice a weird bump in that area, you should go see the doctor. Not an emergency. Don't need to go to the emergency room. Just go to see the doctor relatively soon to get that hernia corrected through surgery. All right, so the spermatic ducts are the tubes that are carrying the sperm. And they go from the testes to the urethra. And the urethra has 2 parts. The prostatic urethra going from the urinary bladder through the prostate gland, and the penile urethra that's traveling through the penis. So first off, after the testes is the epididymis. Epididymis, about 9 meters of coiled tubes in a teeny tiny little area. This is where immature sperm go to from the testes. There the sperms are stored and mature. So over time, the sperm will mature in the epididymis. However, they're still inactive. The inactive sperm will then travel up through the spermatic cord via the ductus deferens, then pass through the abdominal wall, and then the ductus deferens will travel over the top of the urinary bladder and end at the posterior side of the urinary bladder. And this is all done by muscular contraction, so the sperm are still inactive. The ductus deferens then sends the sperm through what's called the ejaculatory duct, which connects up to the prostatic urethra. So ejaculatory duct, very short, carries the sperm during ejaculation into the prostatic urethra. And then, of course, through the prostatic urethra into the penile urethra and then out of the body. So epididymis, ductus deferens, ejaculatory duct, prostatic urethra, penile urethra. A vasectomy is when the ductus deferens are cut inside the scrotum. This is a relatively easy operation, rare that there are side effects, can be done in an outpatient setting, and it prevents sperm from ever making it out of the male's body. There are some accessory glands. These glands produce the fluid portion of semen. We have the bulbourethral glands, which we can't see. They'd be down here somewhere. They produce mostly mucus, keeps the urethra nice and lubricated, helps in the release of the ejaculate, and is often what people refer to as pre-cum. We also have the seminal vesicles, a right and left seminal vesicle that connects up to the ductus deferens to help form the ejaculatory duct, and it produces some of the fluid of the semen. And then the prostate gland. There's only one prostate gland, sort of reddish brown, inferior to the urinary bladder, shaped sort of like a chestnut, and the urethra passes through the prostate gland. Again, prostatic urethra, we're passing through the prostate gland, penile urethra, and the total length of the urethra is somewhere around 20 centimeters. Within the penis are three cylindrical bodies that are able to become erect by filling with blood. We have the two corpora cavernosa on either side. They make up the bulk of the penis tissue. These fill up with blood, leading to the erection. And then we also have the corpus spongiosum. Corpus spongiosum is the tissue that wraps around the penile urethra. And the function of the corpus spongiosum is to keep the penile urethra open during an erection. And here they are in our model, corpus spongiosum around the penile urethra and the corpora cavernosa that fills with blood. When a male infant is born, they have a prepuce or foreskin that covers the glans or head of the penis. These can be removed via circumcision, purely optional. Some parents have it done to their children, some do not. All right, moving on to the female reproductive system. So here's our female model. We've got the labia majus, labia minus, clitoris, vagina, uterus, uterine tube leading to the ovary. Here's the urinary bladder, the pubis bone. Over there's the rectum leading to the anus. All right, so ovary. Ovary makes the egg cells or oocytes. The uterine tube carries them to the uterus. And then, of course, we have the vagina. Here is a cross-section of an ovary. We can see that it has an inner area called the medulla, an outer area called the cortex. In it are lots and lots of primordial follicles, each follicle holding one egg cell or oocyte. These are produced when the female is a fetus. Once every month or so, a primordial follicle will begin to grow and mature to become a primary follicle. Growth is mainly cells dividing outside the oocyte. It will continue to grow to become even bigger, more cells dividing on the outside, becoming a secondary follicle, secondary follicle. And then that will eventually form the large mature follicle with the fluid-filled space. And of course, still the oocyte is there. Then during ovulation, the mature follicle goes to the surface of the oocyte and ruptures, releasing the oocyte and the cells surrounding it to take care of it. And the remaining tissue of the mature follicle becomes the corpus luteum, which produces hormones, and then over time breaks down into the corpus albicans. The oocyte, when it's released, is released into the abdominal cavity and then is swept up into the uterine tube. So the very beginning of the uterine tube, next to the ovaries, are these little fimbriae. Fimbriae are finger-like projections covered in cilia. The cilia beats, producing a fluid that gently carries the oocyte into the uterine tube. The uterine tube is also lined with cilia, gently forming a current to let the oocyte travel along the uterine tube to the uterus. The uterus is where the oocyte arrives, where the embryo and fetus develop during pregnancy. The uterus has two main regions. You have the very large body, the largest portion of the uterus, and then a smaller portion called the cervix. The cervix actually pushes slightly into the vaginal space. There are 3 layers to the wall of the uterus. The external layer is the perimetrium. The middle thickest layer is the myometrium. It's made of smooth muscle tissue, important for childbirth, expelling the fetus. And then the innermost layer is the endometrium. Endometrium is broken down into 2 smaller layers, the stratum functionalis, which is shed each month during the period, and the stratum bassalis, which is always present and reforms the stratum functionalis. So again, superficial layer is the perimetrium, deep to that is the very thick myometrium, and then deep to that is the endometrium, which is lining the inside of the uterus around the uterine cavity. The vulva are the, and then of course here is the vagina. The vulva is the external female genitalia. It includes the mons pubis, a fatty bit of tissue over the pubic symphysis, covered in pubic hair, the labia majora, the outer thicker folds of skin, the labia minor, the inner thinner folds that are hairless, and of course the clitoris, the erectile tissue structure of the vulva. So again, mons pubis toward the front. Here's the clitoris. We have the labia majus or labia majora on the outside, labia minus or labia minora on the inside, the inner folds, the opening to the vagina or vaginal orifice, the urethral orifice opening to the urethra. Here is the clitoris. Women when they're young have a bit of tissue that covers part of the vaginal orifice called the hymen. Here is a cross-section of our model. So here is where the mons pubis would be. Here's the labium majus, labium minus the clitoris, the vaginal opening leading to the vagina. And that is it for this lecture.